Countless details can be picked apart and fed into our patented analysis machines when it comes to anime. Scenes that either induce blood-pumping action or evoke spine-chilling horror can produce hours and hours of things to talk about and sink our teeth into. But one section of an anime is often overlooked because of its supposed irrelevance to the main act. The opening to the anime is merely a flashy way to give credits and get you pumped for what you're about to watch, so it hardly affects the actual show. Or does it? Thinking about it for a while, I realized that openings can actually either positively or negatively distort what you're about to watch, and while they're mostly to give credits to the production team, they're not something to just toss together. This idea emerged in the back of my mind when I was watching Dimension W for the first time. I had seen the opening before, and not counting Mabuchi's sweet dance moves, I thought the opening was okay, but since the Funimation dub of the anime was already out, I decided to watch that instead of the sub. To my surprise, Funimation had completely cut out the opening in favor of the title animation with two simple piano notes.
A limitless supply of energy!
I thought this was odd for a couple episodes, but I actually discovered something else. Dimension W's original opening is a little misleading. I expected explosions, car chases, gunfire, and general action-packed fun. I was shocked to find that Dimension W's narrative is a little more subdued. Quieter and more peaceful moments pepper the anime more frequently than the action, and so Funimation's decision to nix the opening in favor of a mellow start helped me not get too hyper when the anime is inherently more toned down. Even the original opening's theme song is misleading, as it references Taking Back and Revolution, but the anime never comes close to mentioning things like that. Mabuchi does have a disdain for coils, the thing that actually taps into Dimension W for limitless power, but he really doesn't care when other people use them. The society has clearly come to depend on coils, but the anime doesn't say whether or not that's a bad thing nor seeks to change it. The opening gives the wrong idea that this is a show that is actually fun and not one to think about. However, its narrative is almost constantly about its own meta, and the blowing up of stuff isn't really the focus. But since the anime itself was fine in its own right, the opening didn't do too much to disillusion people. But that's an example of an anime whose opening is slightly misleading, but good enough to get people to watch without people feeling too much of the difference. To give people an example of a recent anime that has all the hallmarks of an amazing opening, I'm gonna go almost as recent as I can and reference Mob Psycho 100. For those unfamiliar, Mob Psycho 100 is yet another manga created by One, the very same creator of One Punch Man. Unfortunately, One's original art, as opposed to Yusuke Murata's art, who redrew One Punch Man for publication, is quite off. But a lot of jokes work in favor of the bad art because of how strange everything looks. Bones, who are the team behind the Mob Psycho anime, had to adapt a manga whose art is a little questionable, unlike Madhouse, who when adapting One Punch Man simply took Murata's designs over One's. So how did Mob Psycho turn out? Honestly speaking, I think it's even better than One Punch Man, and one of the reasons is because of the art style. I could go into detail of how the actual show is better, but of course this video is about the opening, which I also think is better than One Punch Man's. In opposition to Saitama running around punching shit into literal oblivion, Mob Psycho's opening evokes a variety of emotions, all ones you're going to feel when you're watching the show itself. First off, we have a drop-dead gorgeous start with Tron-like line work, and a seamless camera pan through the city, curling into an eye as Mob drops in. It doesn't even give you a second to think before the counting begins and the music picks up. In a frenzy, your senses are battening down towards the storm about to come. Onward, the counting goes further while the opening evokes not only a sense of wonder, but a sense of excitement and curiosity, and showcases a lot of weird shit you're gonna see. The seamless transitions between characters not only shows how gorgeous the anime is going to be, but also action that will get your heart ready to explode, which fits when the counting finally reaches 99 and the show begins. Everything you feel when you watch that opening is a true representative of what the anime is like. There's no embellishing or underemphasis. The weirdness, the tone, and the downright amazing artwork are exactly what you're gonna get if you watch this amazing show. But these are both examples of openings that either slightly oversell or are perfect for their anime. What happens when an anime's opening actually becomes detrimental? Well, I also have an example from this season in the form of Sweetness and Lightning. I had first heard of this anime in Crunchyroll's summer lineup, and I was interested in the premise, so I caught up with the manga. It's essentially a story about a single father, Kohei, and his daughter, Tsumugi. Long story short, Kohei decides to learn how to cook instead of buying TV dinners to make Tsumugi happier. Reading the manga, it's very obvious that it has a balance of Tsumugi's cuteness with the bitter realism of the struggles of a single parent. It's not entirely dramatic, but it's also not entirely cute for the sake of being cute. There are realities that Kohei and Tsumugi have to face as she gets older, and the manga illustrates that well. The anime is also currently doing well enough with animating and writing Tsumugi as an actual kid and not a merchandise seller, along with her more reserved father Kohei. The major problem is the opening. Instead of finding a good balance between cute and realistic, the opening goes all out with one of the most cinnamon roll openings, beaten only by the category that Panda Peace belongs in. This is an issue as people not knowing how deep the story can actually get will assume it's just another fluff anime. There are almost no instances in the opening that indicate that the anime will ever get introspective or realistic. Ironically, Kohei's presence in the opening itself is off-putting, as everything else is fluffy, fun, and cute, but he himself is almost always portrayed as on the edge of listlessness. This could have been used as a visual device to offset Tsumugi's childlike wonder, and having Kohei's more reserved outlook be the complementary contrast. Unfortunately, it simply goes with Tsumugi being cute with pink pig sheep things, giving a false impression that Tsumugi herself is the focus instead of both her and her father being equally important characters. This is bad when your anime is trying to break out of the pack. Sure, Konosuba and Gakogarashi have openings that are run-of-the-mill and don't really go into what the anime is really like, but those anime are self-parody, stories that are meant to start with a familiar formula only to offset it and create a unique experience. Sweetness and Lightning isn't. The anime is still good so far, but the opening undersells its work and can put people off, which makes people miss out on a more real and unique perspective of parenthood than what other anime offer. Openings are mostly recognized for their top-tier animation and their music, but their importance extends beyond being eye candy. Depending on the handling of the studio behind it, the opening is not only a visual masterpiece, but a good representation of what the anime is all about. Most of the time you get oversellers whose tone doesn't quite match the subdued feel of the show, but are passable as far as openings go. Worst case scenario, you have an opening that not only doesn't match, but gives people the false impression of a show that is actually more complex than the opening alludes. In turn, people are driven away and the opening's initial purpose of advertisement becomes its own wound. The important thing to remember is that openings have a lot more importance than you'd think at first, and there's a lot more to appreciate in that minute-and-a-half spectacle than a couple of goosebumps.